Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. My name is William Vincent Carlton. This is being broadcast live on YouTube and shall be posted directly on Medium. You can check it out if you go to immortaltype.medium.com. You will find this entire sequence of articles regarding the Tortuga Triangle and my experiences in Mexico City. This being segment 6 today, and it's late or early, depending on how you want to say it. Got a nice cup of tea here, and I'm going to dive into some of the great mysteries tonight. You'll be hearing things that have to do with the spiritual life that you may or may not be familiar with. All I can say, it was new to me at the time that it happened and ended up having a significant impact on my life. And some of this now I actually continue to embrace in the form of the tarot in my life. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, we left off around summer of 2019 last time I recorded. This was yesterday. And if you look in the description below, you'll see a link to the article from yesterday, so you can check it out. And I have a few things that I wrote in advance that I had put in there, just some basic dialogue of what it was like being in family courts, at least in Mexico. So you can check that out. So we left off in the summer. It was June 2019, and let's pause for a second. Just so you know, I know I was pretty emotional yesterday, and when it comes to family courts, when it comes to interference with my children, it's pretty much the way to get a rise out of me. And I'm saying this to the universe in the form of now saying, listen, this needs to change. I don't want to have a rise from anything in my life. I don't want to have issues with anyone or anything. I can only say thank you to consciousness, this experience of life when things are difficult or challenging or strange or overwhelming, because I know through the form of gratitude my life will change. And my focus has never been stronger as far as keeping an eye on and my feelings surrounding the idea of financial freedom, love, unity of family, and every single person that I think of, especially if I've thought about them in the past of either being upset with them or envious, whatever it is, I just imagine everyone having the maximum amount of success and happiness that they can obtain for themselves. Wishing that deeply for everyone. Because I know if I do that, I basically am covering all of the corners of my life to ensure that things move in a new direction, which is how it needs to be. And I know that faith is going to get me there. I know it. So I'm grateful. We have a tarot reading today. I want to just approach this for a quick moment. You may not be able to see this here in the left corner because of the way the photo is taken. And this is a filter through Hipstamatic. However, I really like to use it for the black and white and just the old mystery of it. This here is the Knight of Cups. And it's coming through with a love proposal, taking a chance with the heart, and just being open and honest. I've been trying a lot to be open and honest as of recent, most of my life, but especially recently. Because I really want to attract the perfect woman in my life. I want her to materialize and see the good in me and understand that she could do a lot worse. And I want her to feel totally supported and loved, knowing that she never has to worry. Because that's where I am. There have been times in my life where I've wanted to explore, have fun. I still want to do those things. However, I want to do it with a life partner that I'm with a woman that I know I can trust and be with. And I know I can trust her now because I trust myself. I trust my thoughts. If I have doubts, then I don't entertain them, not for long. I soon find myself replacing those thoughts. And that's a practice. It can be a difficult practice if things aren't working out for you in the way that you would like them to. So just know that the practice that I am in right now, it was very popular in the early 1900s in has been since then. And there are self-help people that embrace the idea of new thought. You know, people call it new age. It's better and more accurate for me to say it's new thought, because it's really what it is. It's a reforming of the mind. It's a recolonization of the mind, so that there are compartments for the things that are most important. Space is made, and a conscious selection is made of the thoughts that are presented in a daily practice. And if you start with a morning meditation, you'll find that there is momentum that moves in the direction of peace and harmony. And it's really important, because if you think of the morning and you treat the morning as if it's a birth, which is what it is, when we go to sleep, our conscious self and the unconscious, which is like the deep, just trudge, all of the stuff that really is, we have to go against and meet resistance with, it goes away, it subsides. And the same thing happens with our conscious self. It goes on sabbatical, and you find yourself directly interacting with the subconscious. And that's why there are no restrictions of time and space when you dream. You can just be in one place and suddenly be in another. There's usually no restriction as far as how quickly you can move or how quickly something can manifest. And you can find yourself, if you are embodying fear while you're in this dream state, you find everything ceases immediately, as if you're under hypnosis. And so there are really only three ways that you can access the subconscious mind. And one is that the one I just described, which is in dream state. Another is through the form of meditation, which is where we are bringing down the we're actually increasing the vibration as far as alignment with higher vibrations that can permeate and give a static message to who you are. But we're also manipulating and using and accessing lower frequencies that have a lot to do with healing when we meditate. So that's another way to access the subconscious mind with great efficacy. And so we have dream state, we have meditation, and the third one is prayer. And a lot of folks often get mixed up with prayer, and I had to for quite some time. And the way that I define it now is that it's always happening. So it's not like you sit down and pray with dedication. That's more meditation. And so prayer is the conscious or unconscious selection of thoughts that we choose to entertain, which leads to a feeling, which is also part of prayer. Now, the feeling that's generated from the thoughts that we entertain, that we pay attention to, that clarify in our mind and become intense, leads to a gut feeling. And in the gut, we have direct connection with the mind. So the mind and the gut are directly connected, and you want to the spiritual practice is creating a bridge between those two. So you would have a connection between the gut and the mind, so that the feeling and the imagery are bound in the light of love and consistent with one another. Very consistent. And if you're doing that, then you're doing prayer correctly. And I often say to folks now, if you're going to pray consciously, which is to meditate, you should always do it in a place of happiness and joy, to try to be celebrating this dedication of time to the betterment of self. And so the way to do it is to come in and you're asking this infinite source of creation for assistance in some way. And the way you do that is by giving faith. And I find there's really no better version of the divine, even though the divine is infinite, and I can't put this or contain the infinite in some thought or feeling, but I can try to approximate it as best as I can as human, and that's what we can do. So when I always think of the the subconscious mind, which is the infinite source of creation, which has no limitations. I think of her as a she, the womb of all creation, the great ancient mother, Pachamama. I think of her, and I think about how could I be the best possible partner to her? So in that way, the conscious self becomes the active masculine component, and the subconscious becomes the passive receiving female aspect or feminine aspect. And the idea is to try to make sure they're both in union without any situations or any sort of interference that would change the polarity of thought and feeling to where it doesn't serve you. And that practice is called meditation. It's also a form of prayer, which is to say we're always praying. So we're always entertaining thoughts. And when we choose to entertain thoughts, we are putting a prayer out there. We're putting a message. Basically, it's like placing an item in the cart of wish fulfillment, which gets sent out to the subconscious. The subconscious receives it and is like a robot in the wish fulfillment center, has no care to hear about how difficult it was for this to be sent off. It just wants to fulfill the wish. And so the subconscious will do it so long as the wish is set as a priority through thought and feeling. So whatever, and that's based on vibration, that's based on frequency. Okay, so we come back full circle. If you're focusing on loving feelings, you're working in a very beautiful high frequency. You're working in a frequency that permeates stronger than most else. It's not going to be diffused as easily by some challenging force. The force of love is infinite in itself. However, in a single instance of it, when facing off against a fearful thought, it totally overwhelms it. So it's really good to understand this, that the power of your loving thought is much greater. And the magnitude or the intensity of it is measured by scientists now. And it's been done in a number of studies using plants, actually, in the vibrations that they send off, specifically with roses, and how they actually remember when they're cut. It's crazy. Through the specific frequency that they send out when they're cut, and then when they see or understand that the same person that cut that rose is returning to just the room where the plant is, it starts sending off the same vibration again, like a warning vibration. And so you see this in plants, you see this in everything. Everything is vibration. It's all vibrating at a specific rate. And love does have the frequency which permeates all things, all matter. As does light permeate all things, all matter. And light is beautiful in that it can actually permeate the body. Very few things can permeate the body without causing harm. Light is one of them. What's another one? Intention of thought, our heart center. I'm trying to show you, or at least describe to you, how things work on a spiritual level. And when I talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about religion. Religion has to do with the verb from Latin, religare, which is to reveal. So religion is to reveal or to lift the veil. You may have heard that before. Spirituality has to do with the breath. In Latin, spiritus means the breath. And so when we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about connection with the breath. Union with it is what yoga means. Yoga in Sanskrit means union. And the biggest focus on the yogic practice has to do with that particular breath. The breath of life, it's prana. You're working with energy. And so the energy of love permeates and has an amazing effect on the body and mind. So the more that you focus on it, the more it will be concentrated on making miracles happen, which include these beautiful cards arriving today. And don't worry, we'll get into story soon enough. This Knight of Cups brings an emotional message. It seems like someone's walking away, though in fact, this Eight of Cups right here is an indication of collaboration. What's interesting about this card, I find, is that in the front row, you have to look carefully, but here's one cup, another, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, and 8. And there is a space right here where there appeared to have been a cup, but it's not there anymore. My theory is that it's hanging out with this individual that's walking away who has a connection with sun and moon. Moving on to brighter pastures in the background. What's going on in those brighter pastures in the background? Well, we have to ask for clarification. And this is a homecoming. This also represents a wedding. The Four of Wands, which has to do with 1111. Here it is, 1, 1, 1, 1. And this beautiful awning, and there's a celebration in the background. You have the kingdom here. There's people celebrating. These are the folks that got married, having a good time. And then, if that wasn't enough of a sign, we're looking at the Ace of Cups, which has to do with a romantic offer. And then we have the Nine of Cups, which has to do with wishes being fulfilled, wish fulfillment, and abundance. You got this gentleman sitting confidently on this bench, and all of the cups, with the exception of one, the Ten of Cups is pretty much the biggest wish fulfillment you can get. That this does signify wishes being fulfilled. The Knight of Cups, right after the Ace of Cups, which is most definitely a romantic offer. That's what it's about. Someone making a romantic offer. And then we have here with the Two of Swords, this is someone that's just getting a great view of the surroundings, a clear view of the surroundings. Someone that's coming in to understand something more through an increase in perspective. You see this vibratory energy being sent out. This is what we're talking about. Just an increase of vibration. And it leads, before we even talk about justice, it leads to an individual that is with opulence and wealth, but in balance. You see this? Get the scale of justice. And you have the two people, homeless folks, the vagabonds, they're asking for alms. And they're being given. While at the same time, this individual with balance is also taking care of themselves with luxuries. It's like there's some people have difficulty with opulence and luxury. And here's what I believe, that the greatest miseries in our life are on the table and available as an option, as is opulence. And if we're feeling guilty for experiencing the bad, well, no one really does. They tend to point fingers, right? And then if we're experiencing the good, it seems like people are pointing fingers also to say, hey, that's not fair. So the bad is not fair and the good's not fair. As long as people are pointing fingers, they're going to be placing themselves in this position, which is the position of poverty. And a perspective or a mindset of poverty is no different than a mindset of sickness, which is to say, even though I am the result of the infinite source of creation, I need to be in this position that's fixed, immutable, and cannot change. I will always be this way until the day I die. And it's the biggest mistake. We are here sacrificing ourselves, a fragment of divinity, to be in a human body trapped in a mud body for about 100 years, not to be miserable. We're here to be good, happy, prosperous. We're here to have fulfilling love, marriage. I firmly believe in it. We're here to be exploring the mysteries. Neptune's here today. to inject some luck into the situation. We're here to have wish fulfillment, increased perspective, and to give back. You know, you can't take care of people without resources. So the Six of Pentacles, in this case, of coins, the person isn't saying I'm better than you just because they're standing. These people decided that they need to kneel. There's no sense in doing that. We're all one. We're all equal. And so for balance to be there, there needs to be giving. So people receive in the right light to give. I think of a good example and an often misunderstood person when it comes to wealth is Elon Musk. He's got $300 billion, right? Sounds ridiculous. Every single thing that he's doing requires unbelievable resources for him to do it on his own. He tried to do a hostile takeover of Twitter, and he's meeting great resistance because it's going to lead to free speech and probably a revealing of a lot of favoritism that's been happening for many years. You know, there's a lot of nepotism and favoritism that's occurring in the media. And it has to do with people wishing to stay in positions of power. And that won't sustain itself according to the laws of justice. It won't. Look at this. These cards came out right next to one another. One is the scale of justice with the Six of Coins. And then it shows up right again, right away with justice, which is a major arcana. So we have a lesser, minor arcana of 6, and then we have 9. And so these numbers, like 3, 6, and 9, Nikola Tesla used to say all the mysteries of life can be figured out through those repetition of numbers. And it's because of their alignment with the golden mean. If you want to look up, the golden ratio, you can learn more. But it's very fortuitous. I'm convinced to see these two scales lined up. This is the portal and this is the last card, which is to say justice is here. If you believe, if you have faith. And through this, we go through the road, through the challenge. So there's a beautiful romantic offer. It's the Knight of Cups is a person who is basically just trying to be genuine and say nice things, make an offer. Sometimes it's seen as awkward, whatever it is, but it's a try, It's with good intentions. It leads to there being a collaborative effort and a letting go and an abandonment of a lot of things that may be perceived as valuable. They have to be given up, though there is something of value that's being taken with this journey. And whatever it is, it's leading to this wish fulfillment with the Four of Wands. This 1111 is wish fulfillment. And from there, it's just everything opens up to the individuals that are here. From this romantic gesture being received, wish fulfillment with the Nine of Cups, an increase of perspective, and an ability to serve those who are in need. I was saying, Elon Musk, he has the most money in the world as far as what is reported, though I would believe there are families with trillions of dollars, multiple trillions, that aren't reported, and they have to do with any family that's tied to central banks. They have that amount of money. And I'll tell you, they are not interested in serving people. Because with that amount of money, it could very easily, you could change the world instantaneously and make it so that everyone has everything they want. That's what Elon Musk is focusing on, serving humanity. First was with sustainable energy, and he's doing this with Solar City, and he's doing this with Tesla Motors. And then SpaceX has to do with exploration so that we can, as humanity, can live on multiple planets and ensure that consciousness stays alive. Service to humanity. Multiple failures. He had to borrow money for rent from his best friend at one point in time. He worked with his brother back in the 90s to try to make something work with the internet as far as map generating and then with PayPal. And his brother, by the way, is doing things with agriculture, which I'm sure they're going to collaborate. He's turning these containers, these shipment containers from China, into full-blown greenhouses, which produce, I think it's something like an acre of food in one container. The comparison, they're super efficient and the food is delicious. So these are the solutions that will likely be implemented in Mars and are already being implemented in urban settings. It's just, Elon Musk is constantly looking for solutions that's in service to humanity. So also with Neuralink and with robotics, because if you think about it, in the autonomous driving cars, these self-driving cars, they figured out how the eye works, the human eye, to where one of their cars has successfully driven from California to the East Coast. I think from California to New York it was, successfully without an accident. I look at the old rockets that SpaceX launched and they were exploding. No casualties, but they were blowing up. Of course, major losses of resources. Elon Musk was on his last rocket. It needed to land and not blow up for the company to survive. And it landed after many explosions and failures. So he's the richest man in the world because of the service he provides to humanity and because he needs to have these resources in order for humanity to be properly served so that consciousness is sustained, doesn't die. So he talks about population decline. He calls it a population collapse. And he has 7 children. He said he's basically doing his part because the population at its current rate of decline is a collapse. And it's disastrous. And he's saying that through robotics and AI, he will be able to, especially now because they've basically figured out and decoded the way that the human eye works. It's a big part of the equation as far as robotics goes, and embedding AI into robotics so that it can serve humanity. So think about it. Instead of going to work and being stressed out, you have a robot that's handling the menial tasks or the hazardous jobs. And it's human beings are no longer placed in these situations where they could be harmed at work. And not to mention just, the physical components are incredible, how many lives will be saved and hardships will be avoided, but also the psychological and emotional impact that comes from working in a hostile work environment. So as this happens, and especially if you're using robotics, intelligent machines to raise crops, harvest crops, and distribute them, the cost of these goods and services dramatically decreases. And look at what's happening to our world right now. The costs are increasing. It's because those who are in power have no interest in seeing humanity thrive. And this is of no fault to those particular groups. I have to say this. It has to do with our collective consciousness and the way that we entertain thoughts. So if you can listen to this and see and discover some value in what I'm saying, you'll understand that Elon Musk is setting up humanity so that we can have the support of robotics and a huge reduction in the cost of products and services while the quality increases. And what we find is utopia and enough free time for us to explore all the areas that we would wish to explore in our lives, which we should have been doing already. Every generation, we should be getting closer to the idea of utopia and achieve it. And so Elon Musk is moving us in that direction. And that's why he has the amount of money that he has. It is to prepare himself and to support his movements in the direction of serving humanity. Just as I say those things, I see the drop frames come in. It's so funny. I've thought for a while that my YouTube channel has been throttled. I'm not going to think that anymore. I'm going to think, it's being opened up. And people are receiving this because they need to receive a message that is uplifting, that shall give them the hope that they need in order for their lives to turn around. That this is my great desire. This is my wish. And so I imagine that. And anytime I see this, the drop frames now, I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to say, thank you, Father. When I say Father, I'm saying as if Jesus would say it. This is the conscious, active, masculine element of our experience. The conscious mind is a father. And the subconscious mind is the mother. So I'm saying thank you, Father. Anytime I see these drop frames, I have to give gratitude and only wish the best for everyone that is involved. And not think that it's something malicious because it's coming from self. I don't want to be contributing to pain, suffering, hardship. And I say this now, on the eve of talking about part 6, which is heavy. The Tortuga Triangle part 6 is a heavy one. So let's get into this. Just know that this is where I am, and this is a general reading that everyone can use. If you're looking for love and wish fulfillment in your life, it's here. The job that you have to do is see things in a new perspective and offer yourself enough love and respect by wishing well for everyone. Really making a cognizant effort to wish everyone well. If there's anything I can transmit to you today, it's that. Okay. So, where we left off was on the day of my divorce, which was June 20th, 2019. A miracle happens. The divorce gets put through. At this time, I'm now living with my best friend Tony and his wife and kids. And just so you know, I'm still living, not still, but I'm living at the same house. Just years later, I ended up returning. I asked Tony if I could come back. I had been through COVID, a couple of situations in Mexico that were very hard. I was doing well financially because of cryptocurrency and had some flexibility to make a move. And I left at the right time, I can tell you. This was October of 2021, last year. But that's skipping time, so we got to go back. There's a lot of story. So anyway, I was living at Tony's house, my best friend Tony. And during this time, I started writing on a typewriter. So I got my first typewriter in April of 2019. I wrote my first letter as my letter of resignation, not recommendation, letter of resignation to Naugatuck Valley Community College. It was on a Royal Quiet Deluxe, the same brand of typewriter that Ernest Hemingway used. And so I wrote it on that, and that was the beginning of my exploration of the typewriter. While this was going on, I was able to get off the hook with the Hague Convention and with my ex going after me for more than the fair amount of child support. It was a mess. Arguably, how much money should someone, this is a question, I wonder how people would answer this. If someone tries to wipe you off the face of this planet and make sure you'll never see your children again, how much should you be paying them in support of their behavior? That's the question. At what point should you be paying that person? And if it leads to hardship for your biological children, should those children be in the custody of that individual? That's another question. Because so many times I've heard the comment how, everything is so expensive. And I've returned the comment by saying, anytime you wish for my children to live with me, I will never ask for a single penny, and they will always have what they need. Always. And they'll have complete access to mom. No restrictions. This is still going to be the case after all of this stuff that's happened, because I know eventually my children will be adults and they'll be able to make decisions on their own, and I know they're going to want to explore the American culture that they've been denied, and their family that they've been denied. The only consanguine family they have in Mexico is their biological mother and their biological grandmother. Everyone else in their family has either disowned or removed contact from them. And I don't want to go into the reasons. I think you can get enough of that from the stories that have been written and told by me. Which is to say, they have a hugely expansive family here in the United States. Big family. My parents are still together. They're still married. They love my children and would only love to see them. And they can't travel because they're getting on in years. My mother has issues with her health. We all need to come together and take care of one another. And this is another theme, which is, before you consider putting your parents in a nursing home, which I'm not knocking nursing homes, I'm just saying, take care of your family members, even if it requires some sacrifice, even if their mobility is declining, even if they don't have the same cognitive ability as before. Take pride in serving your family. These are the ones that brought you into this world. So return that gesture of kindness and love. So when I see my image of happiness, this may not be compatible with many women. However, I see myself being with my children, obviously, and being with my parents, and possibly us all living together. However, me making the perfect home from scratch. I love the idea of having a home built specific for my family to be accommodated, to where there's enough room so everyone has their own privacy, yet at the same time there's plenty of mobility and access. There's plenty of access. So I imagine it being handicapped accessible, one level for most of the home, and everyone can be mobile and get around with limited need for supports. Without the need for much support, they can get around. Just make it really accessible. And I imagine myself writing and talking like this, serving people in this way, and also serving my family, and being the most loving, caring husband I can to a woman in my life. This is what I imagine. And so I see where I am now, the conscious waking life reality. I realize it's not that. However, I can go to that place in my mind, and I have been. And I imagine those days, spending time with my family, seeing the reactions that they have working with my children, being with them. I imagine being with the woman of my dreams, loving her completely, laughing with her, just doing the things that I love, which are basic, but I find they're wonderful. I love to play music. I love to write. I love to narrate. I love to cook. I love to take care of animals. I love to tend to the garden. I love to explore the mysteries of life. I enjoy the spiritual. I'm flexible. I like to learn new things. I don't like to pigeonhole myself too much. I'm open to adventure, so long as there's peace. And these things I'm procuring every time I repeat them and talk about them. I know they're going to come. I know they're here. They're here. The seeds have been planted. I'm watching the garden grow. Harvest will eventually come. I'm not lusting for it. So that's my image when I think of peace. I imagine mobility that comes as a result of having significant resources. I see those resources coming in. I know where my access to passive income is coming from. It'll be mainly from my writing. My illustrations will also be a part of it that have to do with non-fungible tokens, NFTs, minting them, minting the pages that I've written on a typewriter, and auctioning them off. And seeing every time they're resold, I'm receiving commission because of NFTs. They offer a commission every time there's a resale on an NFT. So when people talk about how NFTs may not be valuable, the technology is very young and it's expanding, and it's going to continue to expand. There's talk now of it coming to Coinbase. That's huge. And so as social media embraces NFTs, the unique offerings of these artistic expressions shall be more appreciated. I find that my NFTs are some of the most unique you will find in the world because they're done entirely analog before they're scanned in. Very few people are doing analog art anymore. And I find that there is a want for that. Just as there's a want for the old vinyl records, there's this desire for a return to the more simplistic style of life. You know, you listen to a vinyl record, you get all of that richness from the analog sound, the full bandwidth of the sound, and at the same time, there are no commercials. You don't get interrupted until you have to stand up and change the record, but there's a tangible, tactile experience that happens, and it's beautiful. Same thing goes with the art in my typewritten pages and the illustrations. So I like to have my hands on things, and I consider myself an inventor in that way, trying to make use of old things that are really good, really cool, like really good pencils, really good typewriters. All typewriters are pretty much really good. If they came from the 1940s, 1950s, they were all made beautifully by hand on an assembly line with blood, sweat, and tears. I love those things. Instruments, old vintage instruments, and the sound that they create, and recording that. So music, recording it, these are the forms of passive income that I imagine. Not so much as, okay, I need to have a security plan, but I know that this is going to eventually blossom. They're all seeds that go into a garden, and they're here to serve people. You know, these readings are here to serve you. It's to give you a pathway so that you can understand how to move in your life. And that's service to you. And that comes with compensation. It doesn't have to come directly with you. It's not me taking anything from you. The compensation comes from the universal source of creation. So we can all tap into it. Tap into that deep subconscious, the mystical forces of the universe, and the deepest aspects of your emotional and spiritual self. Right? So I imagine these things as my form of happiness. It's important for me to express this as much as I can. It helps you because it's done in the light of love. And it helps me. So here I was writing for the first time on a typewriter. And I wrote my first novel. And it was called I Scream for You. The Disposable Life of Vicente Cajero. And I like the name Vicente, Vincent, it's my middle name. And I liked the last name Cajero, Cajero, which means ATM machine in Spanish. You know, so I was thinking the disposable life, whatever, you know, it's the idea that, like Chris Rock says, you know, men it was women, children, and dogs are appreciated intrinsically or something like that, though men aren't appreciated unless they're providing, something like that. You know, it was this idea. And it came from these experiences of being in family court and seeing men sign contracts that would put them in jail if they didn't pay money, which was heartbreaking. I saw it happen to an 18-year-old child. A boy got called in, and the same assistant DA who gave me shit was talking to him, interrupting everyone, by the way. You know, you could start saying a sentence and she would jump on you. It was very much like abuse, you know. And so men don't have a voice in family courts. That's what I learned. Saw this 18-year-old boy being told, listen, you got a year to figure this shit out before you have to start making payments. And those payments are going to be until he's 36. He got a woman pregnant in high school, was scared out of her mind, same age. And I'm thinking to myself, why aren't people talking about neem, Neem, an Ayurvedic herb, in schools? Why isn't there a form of education happening that talks about neem in there? Why aren't people providing the supplements? Because if you take neem for 30 days, you basically reduce your chances of pregnancy by 99%. It's just about the same efficacy as if you were a female taking an oral contraceptive. Except men and women can take it, and when you take it together, you reduce the possibility of pregnancy even more. And when you apply it as a topical cream or salve or lubricant, as a personal lubricant, it's a spermicide. Neem kills sperm. And it's also antifungal and antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral. So it reduces the possibility of sexually transmitted disease. And I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck, pardon my French, I know I said a lot of F words in the last one. Why isn't this being educated to children, which I call, if you're 18 years old, you're still a child. You're not prepared to have a child of your own, as far as I'm concerned. Very few people would be prepared. Who's really prepared? All the same, you're young, like you're still in development. The psyche is still developing. And these are the most malleable years as far as the psyche goes, where you can be unhinged and really be messed up with trauma. And so, this guy is being told, this boy is being told that he's got a year to figure it out before he has to start making payments. And they're going to be for 18 years. So that when he gets out of this prison, which is making payments to someone who could potentially hate him and abuse him for the rest of this time, he's going to be 36 years old. And he's going to be very limited with his social mobility because he'd been working the entire time to pay for a child that he really didn't even want to have, because he decided to have sex once and blow his load inside of a woman. Forgive me. Use neem. I can't stress this enough. You don't want to be having children with a stranger. Deepak Chopra says it best. Don't have sex with someone who you can't imagine becoming. If you can't imagine being that person, then you should not be having sex. You want to have a mirror reflection of the person you love with you. And I'm saying this having understood the consequences of not understanding my own mirror. The good news is God had my back and produced beautiful children. And I know my children are great. I know they're soon to be with me. I understand that that's not a bad thing. They need their dad, and they need to have the proximity to their family, and they need access to their American roots, period. They're not getting it. So they'll get it. So long as I am facing this in the light of love. So I start writing this novel, and it's beautiful because I'm experiencing what it's like to write a book on a typewriter. So the fall comes, and I'm having a conversation with my friend George. We decide to go to Spain. We get a good deal on this trip. He plans it all out. I'm cool with it. Really happy with George taking care of the itinerary because I didn't want to do it, and he was all for it. So George got everything figured out, from our flight to Barcelona, where we would be staying, the rental car, places we'd be staying in Andorra, because the plan was to go to Andorra, which is a small country north of Spain and south of France, near the Pyrenees. And then we would head back and figure out a few other destinations that we would decide. But we didn't make it that far. Had a few days in Barcelona. They were beautiful. Went sailing on one of those days. Met this awesome guy, David, who we started talking about cryptocurrency, and I gave him some tips and advice. He made a good chunk of money. He's happy. I'm very happy for him. And we went sailing in the Mediterranean. It was beautiful. So we came back from the sailing, and early in the morning, George went and got the rental car. We got this Peugeot, and he has to drive because he's the rental person under the contract. And I noticed right off the bat that George was very shy and hesitant in driving in the city. And I was thinking, fuck, I probably shouldn't have been thinking that it was dangerous, because it likely contributed to what was to come. Anyway, if you go to Medium, you can search in my articles. It's an older one, but if you look up the unsolved mysteries of Aletheia, you'll get some of this story that I'm talking about now. I've never spoken about this on podcast until now. So we're on our way to Andorra and we're driving on the highway, and George is still very timid driving. We make it to Cardona, which is very funny. You can spell Cardano with Cardona. It's just very weird. It's a castle. So we're at the castle, and it's beautiful. I took photos. I have video of some anomalies happening, like bees were following me. Couldn't figure it out. We see the castle. It's cool. About to get into the car. I have to like shoo a bee out of the car, and I say to George, "Hey man, you know you got my life in your hands, right?" Ha ha ha. I thought it was a big joke, right? So George pulls out, goes down the windy road leading to the main road that's going to get us back on the highway. I'm just looking ahead. I think I'm on my cell phone looking at the photos I was taking, and I just hear George going, "Ah!" And I look over to the left, and a car just blasts us. Probably going 40, 50 miles per hour. A sports car. George is committed to the intersection, and this car is going so fast, he has no way to stop. He hits the driver's side door, and with so much force, and it happens so fast, I remember seeing George just being destroyed. Like his body breaking and blood flying. And I see my own body getting mangled and destroyed. And then in this strangeness of the car blasting us and pushing us across the entire road, I feel this warmth on my right-hand side of my body, which I can't explain. And I feel my body being enveloped with like a shield of protection, kind of like this shield of protection being enveloped with it. And my eyes close. I experience whiplash. The car is now completely on the other side of the road, steaming, destroyed, airbags deployed. Except the side airbag did not deploy where I felt the warmth. It wasn't the airbag. I open my eyes after this. I look over at George. He doesn't have a fucking scratch on his body. No broken bones. Minor lesions. A little bruising. He's perfectly fine. I look at myself. I'm like, I see nothing wrong. No lesions, minor injuries. I'm fine. I look over at the car that hit us, the sports car. It's accordioned. It's gone. Car is a total loss. And the area that should have been most damaged for us was the area that was somewhat protected. Excuse me, which is just phenomenally difficult to understand. Anyway, I call my children immediately from the ambulance, which comes and takes us to the hospital to be checked out. And the folks at the hospital can't figure it out. They're just in shock. A few of them asked to look at the photos of the damages, and they're thinking, how is this possible that you guys are okay? It was a fucking miracle. Anyway, I'm shaken up by this. The next day, we're still in Cardona, and I say to George, I'm going back to the States. And he decided to stay. He had some plans made with folks and really needed to follow through and wanted to enjoy the vacation. I just told him I was too shaken up by it. So I flew back. And it's really fortuitous that I did, because when I flew back and I landed, I got thinking about how I shouldn't be in New England. I shouldn't have been in Spain. I needed to be with my children. So I made this big decision to move back to Mexico. And that was in September. I moved back. I literally arrived on the first day of October, 2019. And it's a crazy story from that point on, which I'll probably continue with more segments. We're almost an hour in. However, I can say that when you read about the unsolved mysteries of Aletia, you'll realize I went on a date with her. When I arrived in October, I thought to myself, I really wanted to find love, and I was not in the right position at all. I was a mess, yet I thought I was unstoppable. I had hubris because I was using magic. I thought that magic was the result for why I survived the accident. I thought magic was the reason why I made it back to Mexico. I thought magic was the reason why I was seeing my children again. And I thought magic was certainly the way that I would attract the perfect love in my life. So I went full steam ahead with it. I made my own candles. I drew my own sigils. I started doing the prayer to bring a woman in my life. And what ended up happening right away was I got a lot of interest from women, and I didn't have the right image in my mind of what the ideal woman would be. And so it backfired on me in multiple instances. And the first one was probably it definitely was the most dangerous. I don't know. You'll hear the story of the women that I dated, and you'll probably say, I don't know. I think this one was pretty crazy. But in October, I went on this date with Aletia. And man, I nearly died. And I witnessed two men die in a motorcycle accident. I saw one man dying in real time, and I saw another man dead from the impact, staring back at me with dead eyes, wide open, blood pouring down the pavement of the road. And I can't remove that from my mind. So there have only been two instances in my life where I've witnessed human beings dying. One was witnessing my daughter die in the hospital, and the other was watching these two men die after this motorcycle accident. And so it changes you, in that it leaves an imprint of the experience of death in such an intimate, powerful way that requires time to process. And at least in my experience, it requires significant time to process, and it needs to be done with some guidance. And I had to guide myself through it, which I did, to where I understand much better now why it happened. And the death of these two men was, in a way, a form of saving my life. And I think about how George and I nearly died. We should have been maimed for life, paralyzed from the accident in Cardona. And we didn't have a scratch, Anyway, I had that date with her, and I'm seeing my children again. I go out on this single date with this woman. I'm not going to say her name right now because I'm not going to use names aside from Aletia, which is, I think, a fake name that she gave me. I'm going to have to make up names for the other women just for the sake of this. I have to really think about it. But there was a woman that I dated. I went on Tinder and made the biggest mistake by making the age range the maximum gamut. So 18 to 60 something plus. And I got a message from a 19-year-old woman talking to her, and she's like, age is just a social construct. It's like, okay, this is how naive I was. We go out on a date. It's very nice. We had a nice dinner. And it was beautiful. I felt youthful through her. A lot of people are probably shaking their heads saying that's disgusting, whatever it is. I didn't have an opportunity to date a beautiful woman when I was in my 20s or my 30s. Not until my mid-30s. But even then, I was still so young and inexperienced and unaware of who I was. And even in this case, I was. But I had enough emotional maturity to be able to not feel bad about feeling youthful again, which is something that I think a lot of men seek when they're in their 30s, late 30s and early 40s, is this rebirth or trying to relive their younger years that they missed out on because they were probably working their asses off, taking care of a family, or just pursuing career 100%. And I went out with her, had a great date. Got a lot of bad stares from the older women in the restaurant, but it was fun. And that was it for several months. And during that time, where several months went by and I didn't have any contact, well, I was in contact with her via text message. And it was nice, always cordial. I dated a few women. One in particular happened to be a very beautiful Russian woman who happened to live in Mexico City. And she became my muse. She was the first woman to ever have interest in reading my manuscripts, and I fell head over heels in love with her. And I wrote, I think it was 2 books. I know it's at least one I wrote for her. And it's called O'er There, like over there, Be Light. And I want to publish this because I find it's a really beautiful novel. And I was deeply inspired by her while this was happening and reading like Dostoevsky. And I also was reading Orhan Pamuk. Did I say that right? Pamuk? I think I said it right. Orhan Pamuk. Orhan Pamuk. There it is. My Name is Red. That's the... Oh, it was a good run all the way until this point, an hour and 2 minutes in. I started reading My Name is Red. That book inspired me as far as writing in the first person. There's a lot of power that comes from writing in the first person narrative. You can't hide behind anyone. Once you're in on that, the character channels directly with you. So it's a beautiful way to write. So you got to understand, I'm going to stop it here because part 7 is going to talk about how I moved 8 times in a year. Really, it was 9 times total during the pandemic. Now, keep in mind, we're coming into November 2019, COVID hits. And it hits while I'm in Mexico. So it's a crazy story. Got to disseminate this bit by bit. I hope you've enjoyed this segment. And when we come back to the next segment for segment 7, I'll be talking about how I moved 8 times during the pandemic. I'll identify these places and what it was like to live in them. In Mexico City, I lived in places that were dilapidated without electricity and without hot water. Sometimes the running water ran out. I dealt with living in a place that had fleas that bit me all the time, cockroaches, critters, rats and mice, complete and total poverty, drinking in order to keep my body warm, drinking alcohol, wine on the cheap, and eating tortillas, living off of about $4 a day. And what it was like to live in absolute poverty, and what it was like to find redemption from an investment that I made years before in crypto, which elevated me to the point where I could escape the poverty, and what that was like. And it was beautiful. Every element of it was gorgeous. But we'll save that for the next segment. So now you have something to look forward to. Just know that all of these experiences allow me now to relate to people, the meek especially, in a more intimate way, so that I can be present and hold the space with love and be a person of service to those in need. I can do that much better now as a result of my experiences in Mexico, for which I'm very grateful. Until next time, my name is William Vincent Carlton. You're listening to Immortal Type. I'm grateful for you being here today. If you like this broadcast, please like it, give a thumbs up, and subscribe. And if you're watching this from Medium, please do chime in and let me know what you think and if you enjoyed this. And if you have any requests when it comes to what I've mentioned so far in these stories, if you'd like more details, feedback, chime in and let me know, and I'll be happy to explore those areas with you more. Thanks again. I'm wishing that all of your desires, dreams come true. May your wishes be fulfilled. This abundance is for you. Make no mistake about it. Justice is here for you to balance things out. Just be sure to give when you have it. So important. If you have abundance in your life, it is so that you serve people. So make sure when you have that you also give. May all your wishes be fulfilled. I'm wishing all the blessings and goodness to come into your life, so that the highest good of yourself permeates and presents itself in all of your interactions with humanity and this beautiful planet. God bless you. I love you. Have a wonderful evening.